thank you, Richard, for that kind introduction. I had some folks that wanted to come up here with me because they wanted to see this neck of the woods. Some of our folks in the campaign office, you know. I said, well, I can pretty much navigate this by myself. So I only drove from Houston up to Trace this morning, and I'm glad to be up here and have a chance to be around friends that I hadn't seen in a long time. I appreciate all y'all turning out. This is an amazing crowd. Well, y'all want to sit down? There's some chairs up. Y'all sit up here on the front row. You might learn something up here on the front row. There's a few chairs here if any of y'all want any, but that's a great sign to have a standing room only crowd. You know, a friend of mine, his father was a doctor, and he practiced at Boonville in Iuka, and I thought the Iuka hospital was big as Baptist in Memphis, you know, as a kid, being from Holcomb, Mississippi, and so I've always marveled at this area. It's just a beautiful part of the state, just absolutely, you know, some of the time I say it doesn't look like Mississippi, really, and there's some really pretty counties up here in the hills. I know Prentice with the rolling hills, and I'm just glad to get a chance to come up here. So, Richard, yeah, I've been busy. I was in Atlanta yesterday at lunch, and then I had to have a site start at some of the farmers over in the Delta where had a fundraiser for me. So I stumbled in there, you know, worn out, and thank goodness sakes, wife eases up to me and goes, "Hey, your zipper's open," you know. I wore blue jeans today. I knew I would be okay with them. But this campaign trail's entertaining. You know, this race is, I've run 4 attorney general races and 2 DA races, and you local candidates, I appreciate what y'all are going through, and particularly your families, being out here on the trail. But this is the most positive race that I have seen, and everybody's ever run for office probably says it's the most important race. But I really think that we're at a cornerstone in our state's history. If we keep doing what we're doing, it's not working. And so what I'm seeing is more moderates coming together. I mean, the crazies in both wings are kind of driving us toward the middle, and you can accomplish some things like that. And so that is what the positive thing. There's a lot of other undercurrents, I mean, this time that I'm seeing, but the issues are mainly what are driving the change in this race. And one of those is the road bill. I mean, that's 8,000 working people swinging hammers. That's how you can boost the economy. You know, our economy has grown at a rate of 2% since 2009. Little towns like Houston, 2-lane road towns, I mean, that recession, we just about would have rolled the streets up in our town had it not been sweet potato farmers and a little furniture activity. But 2% since 09, not a year, 2% total. Tennessee's grown at a rate of 24%, Arkansas at 14, Alabama at 11. What we're doing is not working. And what we have been doing in Jackson is they gave our money away. They literally gave it away in tax giveaways. Because y'all remember in our lifetime 500 bridges being out? I mean, I remember back into the 60s and 70s. I don't remember when we didn't have enough money to do the things that cities and counties need to do in schools. And what they've done is these tax giveaways. The first one was $350 million a year. And then they came back with a $418 million a year tax giveaway, mainly to large out-of-state corporations. $278 million of the $418 million was for a franchise tax. And guess what percentage of that went to large out-of-state corporations? 78%. Boom, that's $210 million a year. Once it's phased in, it goes out of our state. So it's $750 million, and our general fund budget is only $1 billion. I mean, excuse me, $6 billion a year. So they gave away $750 million, and that's what's happened. That's literally what's happened. Why would they do that? Why would you give it to large out-of-state corporations? For campaign contributions. And you see it in Washington, but we don't want to believe it's happening here. But it flat has happened, and I'll give you some examples as we go along. And one of the things that we've done, we've turned down $5 billion from the federal government for the past, $1 billion a year for the last 5 years. Now that's a tax on us. That would keep our rural hospitals open in our state. And that's $1 billion a year. That's 10,000 jobs. That's working people. Some of them swinging hammers, building clinics, but most of the money is going to go to those people who work in the best paying jobs in our rural communities. And so it's just a closed meeting. That's a tracker right there. That's a guy that goes around for our other side and makes video.
No.
It wasn't an open meeting? I don't know, Mr. Chairman, you have to address that if the public was invited to it. But okay, all right, well, I wasn't sure. But anyway, these are the same things I say everywhere I go, so it really doesn't matter. But on the health care bill, it's $1 billion a year that we, thank you, $1 billion a year that we are passing up. And just take an example, for example, a hospital in Houston, Mississippi has been open, the emergency room, my whole life. And about 5 years ago, the emergency room closed. Houston's population is 3,800 and 3,900 maybe on a good day. But our emergency room closed, and there's a 22-year-old young lady about 9 months ago, and she had an asthma attack. And her parents rushed her to the hospital thinking that the emergency room's open. She's pregnant, got a 1-year-old child. And they get there and the emergency room's closed, so they race back into town to the fire department, and she dies on the street in Houston, Mississippi at the fire department. That's like a third world country. And put it in perspective of what we had in 1950, and 30s, 40s, and 50s, my grandfather practiced medicine in our county in the old hospital in the emergency room. We've had that the whole time, and we've turned down $1 billion. And that's, they try to say, well, somehow that's welfare. It's got nothing to do, it never touches a poor person's hands. That money goes into the best paying jobs in rural communities like mine in a healthcare clinic. So that's about $5 billion that Tate Reeves has cost us simply because whose idea it was. And that's where the partisan politics has got to give. I mean, we have got to get over all that fussing and fighting and finger pointing that we're seeing in Washington. We certainly don't need it here down in our capital. Another area that we have to work on is education. Early childhood education is the best investment that a state can make, or none, toward economic development. Because those kids ages 2 to 5 are learning they are absorbing more than at any point in their life. 85% of their brain develops during that period. So 4K education in Mississippi, we can pass that the first month. Those other two bills I've talked to you about the road bill, the votes have been there for 5 years. The votes have been there for expansion of health care for at least 18 months. And I'm talking about the same group that we send back. We'll probably see most of those will probably, some will get reelected. And I'm talking about having a conservative legislature, but the votes will be there for road bill and health care. The votes will be there for early childhood education. We can do 4K if we fully fund $33 million is what it would cost to start out. And over 4 years, we would be able to get to the full coverage of every child at 4K. And I've kept the nursery at church and seen 4-year-olds run around, and all that kind of stuff. I've had my 3 at 4. My memory's fading on what it was like, with them. But I walked into several 4K kindergarten classes in Vicksburg a couple of weeks ago, and they're sitting down. Their eyes are locked on. They're paying attention to what the teacher's saying, and when I come in, they've already learned their ABCs, and this is 4 years old. Most of them, when their mothers are maybe working 2 jobs, and they may not have a father at home to just read to them. Their vocabulary exponentially increases when someone is just reading to them. So that has such an impact. It's an 18-year investment. We can do that. The votes are there to do that in the legislature. We need to raise our teacher pay, and for you teachers here, thank you for your service. We want to get to the south, at least to the southeastern average for our teachers. And what Mark Twain, it was said about their statistics, and Will Rogers or something. That was Will Rogers talking about Democrats, I think, but maybe it was Mark Twain talking about there's lies, damn lies, and there's statistics. What you see is, you'll hear Tate Reeves talking about, teachers since 2012, have got 8,000 additional dollars. But if you look at the facts, he just takes a sliver of the number of teachers. And if you do average teacher pay like you do every other category that you want to test, average teacher pay in Mississippi, if you were teaching in 2012 and you're teaching now, you're making $900 a year less. And that's the facts. It's just like that 2%. They'll try to paint the economy, it's just wonderful, but they're twisting the statistics. And our teachers making $900 less are making the worst in the country. And that's insane, for the people who give more to our kids. And I thank our law enforcement every day. I work with them. I appreciate their service. I'll stop somebody in the military in an airport I don't even know and say, thank you for your service, But our teachers touch multiple people every day in their lives, and it changed their life. And it'll last for 4 decades. I remember I was doing a report the other day. I was typing. And I remember what my teacher told me when I took it 2 years, 10th and 11th grade. That far back, and that was in 78 or 9, somewhere along in there. And so it sticks with you. We need to raise our school funding. We've cut our school funding by about $2 billion the past 8 years, and we've got to get the funding up because we're not paying enough even for the trade skills that we used to have when I went to school. In Houston in 1980, we had at least some welding rods and some metal to teach kids how to weld something together. We had bricklaying, we had pipe fitting and different things. The schools have been cut so bad, they've cut many of those programs out. And now we have migrated to our community colleges to depend on them, and thank goodness that, Itawamba Community College and my 5 counties down there started with the tuition. It's not a free boat ride, but it's tuition free for those who want to go to the community college and can't get a grant or scholarship otherwise. And then the counties up here began to do it at Northeast. And, if our area can do it, I'll talk to people on the coast and they're sitting there with their mouth open that we're doing it. And I'll say, well, Tennessee copied us. They're doing it statewide. We can do it statewide and not even make the counties pay for it. If we do $6 million, that's all. $6 million will cover any kid that can't get a grant or scholarship otherwise in the state of Mississippi. And that's just, I brought in tons more than that every year in drug case settlements of companies that had overcharged us. So that's another area that we can do the first month. The harder ones are going to be passing a tax cut on groceries. That's the most regressive tax that we have, because the millionaire goes to the grocery store and buys a gallon of milk, and a poor person goes and pays the same amount. And so if they're going to have any kind of other revenue sources, certainly the working folks need to cut, because the working folks have been kicked to the curb. Folks like us, we hadn't had a say what's happened in our legislature the past really 16 years. I remember when Haley Barber and I took office. Haley raised his hand. I can make a promise. I'm not going to raise anybody's taxes. But he did. Tuition at Ole Miss in 2004 was $4,000. That's room, board, and meal ticket, not books, not anything else. Now it's $8,500 plus. It went up again just in August. And what they did was they priced the ability of a working person like me out of ability to send my kids to college without debt. And when they come out of college with $40,000 debt, they can't come back to a 2-lane road town like I'm from. And that is what's driving this race to be an opportunity for working folks to take back over our legislature. Because Republicans and Democrats, 57 years old or like me, I ain't got any grandkids yet. I claim I'm too young for that, and I don't know how to deal with that, But at some point, I want my kids to be able to live nearby, and my grandkids grow up around me. But in this environment, we're losing more than any state in the union. The past 6 years, we lost more kids. I mean, I'm a back row Baptist. I sit on the back pew because I'm always late. And I look at the backs of heads in Houston, Mississippi of the students or my friends that I went to school with. And there's about maybe 25% still in Houston. And of those now, I'm seeing the ones who stayed, their kids are leaving. And they're going to Atlanta, Nashville, Austin, Texas, and places. And many of them will create tech jobs. And that's our best hope for our towns like this one and ours. Y'all got 4-lane and river and access that we don't have down in Houston. But the hope is technology jobs. In rural areas of our state, because many of the jobs are moving out of Austin, Texas. They're moving out of the Silicon Valley because of cost of living. And excuse me, I planted my food plot Sunday a week ago, and I still haven't gotten over it. I baked too much dust, I guess. But maybe it's pollen on the trees. I don't know. What was I talking about?
Tech jobs.
Tech jobs. Thank you. Somebody's paid attention. No, I didn't see any of you asleep yet, but I'll finish in just a minute. But on the tech jobs, some kid in this county's got an idea for an app that they could develop and make $1 million if they had somebody to show them how to develop it and had the capital to do it. Now, I wouldn't know how to use it if they gave it to me, but they can. And those tech jobs, be it drones, you see the Golden Triangle came out of the recession faster than other parts of the state, usually like Tupelo does, the coast does, but because of those tech jobs that they created there, and maybe it's drones in the Delta, because they're used more in agriculture. But those tech jobs are the ones that you know, in Oklahoma, Mississippi, they can have an old house and 8 of them work there. You don't have to build out that infrastructure. So a lot of the big outfits that we spend millions and millions on, it takes 30 years to pay us back out. We can save just by, you don't have to spend all that on the infrastructure. So that'll be our economic development model. Last thing I want to mention to you that we need to do, I'm going to take questions from any questions that you have. And if any of y'all need to leave or whatever, I understand it's a busy day, and I appreciate y'all having a special meeting. Thank you. But the last thing is going to be the tough one, and that is try to rein in our legislature. Because what they're doing is taking, you know, giving away our money, giving away contracts in exchange for campaign contributions. And the way I think we rein them in is to stop them from taking corporate contributions, stop them from taking money during the legislative session, stop them from taking gifts, and more importantly, make them subject to the Open Records Act like everybody else. Like law enforcement, like boards of supervisors, alderpersons, everybody in government, attorneys general, governors, everybody else is subject to the Open Records Act. And what that means is they, you can get in their emails. And I'll give you an example. Like Tate Reeves, you know, he got caught by the Clarion Ledger down there trying to build a road to his gated community. You know, spending $2 million of our money. And he said, oh, I didn't know anything about it. Well, you know, we couldn't get access to his emails. He writes me a letter and says, well, there are no emails. I don't have to tell you anything, but there are no emails. So as soon as we go over to the Department of Transportation, they had been beating them to death over there. They gave me a stack of emails. There were 22 going back and forth. And it was emails like, the Lieutenant Governor wants to know today. You know, and so it was obvious that his minions were just browbeating. In fact, they killed the budget of the Department of Transportation and my budget, the only 2 budgets that didn't make it that year, and they had to have a special session. That was part of the coercion. So if you're able, if people at any time in the media or whatever are able to request those records, that tamps that down. It won't fix everything, but it'll stop a lot of the problems that we deal with. In another area where there's a great example, our hospital association in Mississippi wanted to compete with 3 managed care outfits that run our Medicaid program. Those 3 are all out-of-staters. You know, they come in and through campaign contributions got those contracts. They get $240 million a year. They take that out of state to administer our program. That's just the tip of the iceberg. They actually make a lot more than that. So the hospitals wanted to compete with those 3. They got a bill passed out of the House. Large number of those House members voted for it. It got to the Senate. It never got a hearing. You know, to let them compete. They were going to keep their money at least in Mississippi, and I was for competition. More the merrier. If they can do it cheaper, let them do it. And so the hospital association is made up of pretty much every hospital in the state. And reason that it didn't get out of the Senate, Tate Reeves was given $262 grand by one of those companies, Centene out of St. Louis. Now, you know, $262,000 in campaign contributions that's just a great example of what's happening in our legislature. That's the way he's raised $10 million. You know, people didn't give him that money just because he didn't do anything for them. They entered into contracts, and it's not just tax giveaways, it's these contracts. Like, they gave an outfit in Memphis $3 million to go around our schools and put up posters. You know, I think our schools could have handled that part. You know, and of course that company gave campaign contributions. And that's what is driving, that's what's wrong. That's why we don't have money to do the things that we normally have. And we've got to change that. And that'll be a tough fight for us, but I think we can do it. I mean, we can win this race, folks. I've been up in the polls for 2 years. I would have run if I didn't think I could get elected. But I wouldn't want it if you couldn't do something. And we can do those 3 things I've mentioned about roads, education, and healthcare, certainly. The last one, dealing with the legislature, is going to be a battle. But we can make this happen, but it's going to take us getting on the phone, social media, any way that you can contact that human touch, whether it's a note, a letter to friends to get them out to vote and to encourage them to help on issues like teacher pay and those kind of things. People get that, you know, that affect them, and all this partisan stuff, you know, they're going to raise all this silly partisan stuff, but you know, this is about issues that affect us and whether we can change our state going forward, because we keep doing what we're doing. You know, it's not working. At one point when Governor Winter was in and we did 5K education, we were on the right trajectory. The business community was working with government and creating jobs. Other states looked at us more positively than they do today. I think we can get back on that trajectory. And this is one of those turning points where it makes a difference whether you stay at home or whether you encourage your friends to get out and vote. So if y'all want to see us do better in education, roads, and healthcare, then and I ask that you get out and help me. Now, that's what I came to say. But if y'all got questions, I'd really rather hear what the questions are specific to this area, or about the generation in general, or whatever you're.
How do you feel about mental health service? I mean, I've been 15 years in care of mental health service, and we're the underfunded thing, and I just want what's your take on with that?
Well, thank you. I've been fighting for mental health issues for at least the last 8 years.
But I mean, I'm sorry, sir. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that does not have the money or the insurance, or they don't draw, and they can't come. And a lot of young people are taking their lives because they have no way to come and get that help. And I want to see a change in the mental. I know y'all can't.
Let me answer that, all right? Let me answer that.
Yes. I'm sorry.
These law enforcement officers encounter somebody with an underlying mental health issue most every day. Many of them are self-medicating with drugs, but it's an underlying mental health issue. The Affordable Care expansion in Mississippi, that $1 billion a year, will cover mental health. That will help with law enforcement and people with mental health issues. People that, our kids, or somebody's gonna have a flat in my family, or something's gonna happen today. Car, I gotta do some little emergency. But people with a mental health issue, it's just, it's multiplied the stress of going through a decision like that in a day. And those are the people that certainly we need to take care of. And I've been trying to tell the legislature for the last 8 years. We wrote a series of letters. We got sued by the federal government. I kept them from suing us for a while. Georgia had to pay $225 million because the Americans with Disabilities Act says that you have to provide care. If they're capable of living in their communities, you have to care for them. And instead of warehousing them in Jackson or wherever. But our problem is we didn't have enough beds to warehouse them in the first place. If you got a kid that needs drug and alcohol treatment or mental health care, it's extremely difficult. Our task force, just this past legislative session, I helped form a task force that at least addressed the commitments for a parent or spouse there to make the forms uniform, to make the fees uniform in the state. You could go one county to the next. One county might be $750. They required you to hire a lawyer and all those kind of things. We've tried to make it easier. The Department of Health is going to have to develop a book to teach a family member how to get one committed. But if you get them committed, there's got to be money there to put them in a bed. And we've trained our law enforcement officers along with people with mental health and combined training. At first, we began to train law enforcement officers to recognize somebody with a mental health issue, and it's called de-escalate the situation and deal with it. Then we began to train bringing in the mental health care people locally with the law enforcement officers and do our training so they can put a name with a face and get a number of somebody who can take that person once you de-escalate it. And it's usually a standoff at home with a 26-year-old boy that's on drugs that has really got an underlying mental health issue. And law enforcement are there, and if they can hand them off to somebody that's a mental health patient, they much more need to be in a patient's bed rather than jail. And guess who pays for it when they go to jail? It's the counties. If we put them in a healthcare bed and we expand healthcare, then we're able to pay for that. And so that will be a huge impact. And that's our saving grace, because we lost that case. And I've been telling them we need to spend more. We need to graduate more psychiatrists. We graduate 4 or 5 psychiatrists every year at UMMC, and that's not even enough to keep those that are retiring. I mean, if you're living up here, if you can find one, a full-blown MD psychiatrist, they got such a patient load, and they work at a facility you can't get into to see them. And so we've got to build all that out. But the healthcare is a saving grace to all this, and that's absolutely necessary that we do that to expand mental health care in our communities.
Well, how about having social workers and nurses in the school system?
We need them there to provide training to teachers, and we're trying to do some of that so they can recognize a kid with a mental health issue at an early age. Because if you can recognize them, maybe they don't wind up on Ritalin. Maybe they're do it through counseling. And so recognizing and having a social worker or somebody that can counsel. Boys don't want to go there. They wouldn't dare go in and admit some mental health issue. So what we did is we developed an app this spring. I'm on the Jason Foundation, it's out of Nashville. It's a teen suicide prevention program. And they were developing an app. I said, hey, can we copy that, use that app format to include teen suicide prevention And we did. We just developed an app, and it's on our website. You can get it on iPhone, whatever, or download it, you know, from iTunes or whatever. But it's an app that covers not only teen suicide, recognizing those signals. We want to put it in the hands of every teacher so they can recognize it. But also, it's set up for students if you have a friend that may be about to commit suicide. It has anxiety and depression. Signs of that. It's a separate little section. It's about 10 sections in it, and it's teen dating violence, it's domestic violence, it's those issues that, you know, and kids aren't going to go to the AG's website and download those pamphlets. They've been there, you know, we put them on there for a long time, but you have to meet them where they are, and if you can do it with an app, that's where we're trying to reach them. But we certainly need, you know, school resources officers in the schools as well. There's so many areas where we have just let atrophy take effect because of all the cuts. I mean, because they're worried about trying to put a part on a school bus in most school systems, and you know they'll let a lot of those jobs fall to the wayside, and they're desperately needed in our schools. I'll tell you one thing, Debbie. You know, when I got, I wanted my family to look at that app because I made them put vaping in it, and of course I've been throwing a fit of. I got a 16-year-old in school, and I called her one of those little. I figured out what they were. Somebody shown me, tipped one to me. I called her one in bed and made her write a paper. So I made them put the vaping section on there, and then y'all see the deaths that it's causing now. It scared me to death. But it's got about 8 or 9 sections in it. But anyway, I made my family look at it before we did it, just to see their angle. And Debbie decided she had anxiety, and I think this campaign had something to do with it. You know? I think she's okay now. She had her birthday Sunday, and of course I was out on the road, you know. But she had a snack party, so she's doing fine. But, those are things that we can do that don't cost much, that do have an impact on mental health. If any of y'all got other questions, yes ma'am.
I am Prentice County Chair, and one thing that could help a lot if everyone would stand behind Steve Eaton and Janice Patterson, get more Democrats involved, would help Jim when he gets elected.
That's right. I saw Steve dart through a minute ago. There he is, yeah. I saw the congressman. Yeah, well, I appreciate y'all all being here. If y'all have other questions, I'll be glad to answer them, and if you don't, I'll be here to try to answer them. But I really am impressed. This is a beautiful crowd to come.
Jim, I'm like a lot of these folks in here. There's not a lot you can tell me about Jim Hood because we've kept up with you through the years. You know, I think for a lot of us, this is a good sign because we were hoping it would have been done 4 or 8 years ago. But now may be the right time. And I just want to know, is the squeak in the door of the pickup planted, or does that door
Man, that's a 2003 model truck, you know. I didn't drive it up here today. It's my farm truck. It's a diesel. It's got about 190 on it. The other's got about 105. But we're trying to make sure people know. You know, all they're gonna talk about is Washington, and all I'm talking about. You know, I'm worried about the swamp we got in Jackson, not the one in D.C. You know, but Richard, I want a video of who was it came up with the idea. We looked under the hood, and the hood's good. I like that. I wish our tracker would have been able to capture that a while ago.
He's good for Mississippi.
Yeah, I think maybe we can video. If I had our campaign folks, I guarantee they'd have you over here in the corner saying that. But I wouldn't let them come today. I got to go back down to Tupelo this afternoon, but I'm gonna go through the courthouse and visit around. I love this area. You know, I mean, this is a beautiful area of our state. Y'all do appreciate it. I think y'all do. But I go to Natchez, and it is absolutely beautiful down there. And it just seems like people don't really appreciate the beauty that they actually have and what is in our state. You know, there's such a yearning from people from other parts of our country to come visit our state. There's a mystique about it. You know, we've hid our greatest asset is our diversity. You know, that's why we've got all of the great musicians and writers. I mean, we have an inordinate percentage of writers, and Mac McAnally from down the road here, you know, 9-time musician of the year. You know, we have so many. I was in Glendora, right outside there. That's where Morgan Freeman lives. You know, we have such an asset, and people do want to come here. I see them come down the Blues Trail, and I'll be hunting in the middle of the Delta, and it'll be these German accent people wandering around over there in top hats, you know. And They're looking for Robert Johnson's grave, which is down Money Road. And you can go out there, and, you know, where the help was shot, the end of the help where that white church is, that's where Robert Johnson is buried. You know, that's so. You know, the story goes he sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads to be able to play music like he could. But you go out there around his grave and there's dollar bills on it, there's whiskey bottles around the tree. Those musicians from Europe come over here, they're trying to feel the blues, you know. And they land in Memphis and they'll go through Graceland, they'll come to Clarksdale, and there's such an attraction in our state. If we can develop that blues trail, get them to Jackson, our Civil Rights Museum is ground zero. We were ground zero in civil rights. It's a wonderful museum. Send them to Natchez or back up to Natchez Trace. You know, the beauty of the Trace, there's a lot of Canadians, a lot of people travel it. Get them to go to Elvis's birthplace on up here and make a loop or go down the coast. You know, we in the future, we will make more in revenues of tourism because of our people and because of the beauty that we have in our state and the history. It's just such a rich history than we will off of gaming. And once we reach that point, that'll be a corner, I think, that we'll make. Maybe it's 20 years down the road, but there are a lot of people, AG people that I meet, my friends in the north, they want to come here. And so this is a beautiful area that I certainly will send them because I love the people and I love just the town, the calmness it brings to me, you know, to be able to come here. Some areas of the state don't do that for me. So. Anyway, so if y'all don't have any other questions, I thank y'all very much for being here. God bless you.